This is The Guide Gals, a modern, wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 11,000 hours on Pinterest, and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who's obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I do.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about some different ways that you can simplify your wedding without sacrificing the vision that you have for your big day. Because if the thought of over-the-top details and lots of planning, lots of decor, big this, that, or the other thing, if that type of talk makes you want to sprint to City Hall, then this episode is for you.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of maximalist stuff in weddings. So, like, everyone has seen, like, the floral installations that are, like, overflowing, over the top, and, like, really decadent, like, dessert tables. It's just not for everybody. So, as someone who looks at weddings a lot, like, it's part of our job, like, we just are immersed in the wedding industry, I love to see both sides of the coin. But depending on your personal style, maximalism, like, really just might not be for you. So, when that feels overwhelming for you, that's okay. Like, that stuff is really expensive. So if you're leaning more towards something that's a little bit more minimalist, a little bit like a few steps back, that is so okay. We're going to talk about how you can do that in your wedding planning and why it could be a good thing.
And really this concept of making things a little bit more minimal, or the idea of underconsumption, has been really popular just in general lately, but I think it's also been big in the wedding industry. So I think honestly, by nature, there was a time where the climate of just life made things harder to, like, it was harder to have these big, expensive, elaborate weddings. But then we also, I think, all found the beauty in that, the beauty in these like very simple, pared down type of days. So it's it is a really refreshing thing to see, like, after years and years and years of over the top weddings, this emphasis on a little bit more minimal, the underconsumption core. We love to see it.
Yes, and building a wedding day with the idea of underconsumption in mind helps to kind of clear away the clutter. So wedding planning in general is really overwhelming. So if you can eliminate the frills, you can just be really intentional about the things that you do choose to pour attention into and, like, pour your money into, your time into creating or planning for your big day. You're just going to be left with all of the little details that really mean a lot to you.
But before we jump into all of these ways that you can simplify your wedding day, we're going to talk about beverages.
Caroline, what are you having today?
Thank you for asking. You guys have heard me talk about this for a while. This looks very similar to the one I had last week, but it's not. It's different. It is, I have this like maple pumpkin cold brew concentrate. So the same brand, Monin, as Monin, whatever. I've never known how to say that. They have a maple pumpkin cold brew concentrate. And the thing I love about it too is it's lightly sweetened. So most of their concentrates are unsweetened or sweetened. And the unsweetened, I like to have a little bit of sweetener. But the sweetened ones are like insane. There's too much sugar in those ones. So this lightly sweetened is perfectly in the middle. And it's my favorite flavors, maple pumpkin. So I feel great. I feel amazing. That's my beverage.
I love that. I am drinking water, like, really boring. I have some, like, element electrolytes in there. I'm drinking water.
Yay!
In this cup. Yeah.
I love it.
Really exciting stuff. Alrighty, so the very first thing we're going to talk about in terms of simplifying your wedding day is going to be the guest list and the party. So for the sake of streamlining things, if you keep your guest list strictly like an A list, you're going to have fewer guests, and that is going to require less of pretty much everything else. So less food and drinks, less tables and chairs, like rentals like that, centerpieces, even wedding favors. If you do choose to do wedding favors, that's another thing you can simplify, by the way. So yeah, so that's going to cut on costs. It's going to cut on everything. That's really great. And plus, you get to have that quality FaceTime and a cozier group of friends that are invited. So we're both really big fans of intimate events. It just feels so nice. Of course, like, there's something to be said about like those big over the top parties, but that's not what we're talking about today. Those are cool and great, but just the feeling, the specialness that comes with having that smaller group of people that you can really spend the time interacting and connecting with each of them is just really great. So if you do keep your wedding party to a minimum, there are lots of positives there, and it's a really great way to simplify your day. Even if that's the only one that you do, it's going to make a massive difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and another way you can kind of reduce either a guest list feel or even your wedding party. Like if you are going to have a smaller guest list, I feel like sometimes having a smaller wedding party lines up with that too. Like keeping it very minimal and maybe just having your sister, your closest friend, whoever that may be. It can also keep things just like simple for you to have, which is like one bridesmaid's dress or one groomsman or whatever else that may be. It pares down some more details in that realm as well.
For sure. I know that big wedding parties can come with complications and expenses and all of that. So, yeah, another great place to simplify stuff.
Another way to kind of minimalize some of your wedding details is within the invitations and the stationery. A lot of times there are really beautiful invitation suites that have multiple little pieces of paper that all together look stunning, beautiful, gorgeous. I love the flat lays that kind of come out of those nicer stationery pieces, but like sometimes those extra pieces of paper are just filler. They're just there to look pretty and it's there for aesthetics. So if the aesthetics are a little bit more negotiable to you or you just really want to keep it simple, this is a great place to save money and simplify it. Honestly, it's even a great place if you wanted to do digital invitations. You could easily do that here or digital save the dates. I like kind of the pairing of digital save the dates and then a like actual physical invitation. I think that is nice and it's great for you to have that physical invitation as a keepsake or for that flat lay like I was talking about. But you can really keep that physical invitation very simple. You can put all the details on there. If you want to have additional details, add a QR code that will help them find your wedding website easily or whatever else it may be and direct them exactly where to RSVP instead of giving them another piece of paper for them to send back. There's lots of workarounds for this that I think one are budget friendly and two simplifies things a ton.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, invitations and stationery. It can get so expensive. So
Yeah.
that's like a place where if that doesn't like speak to you on like some sort of like level where you're like, oh, I just love the paper goods, definitely a place where you can cut back on stuff. And most people when they get it in the mail or if you do digital, they're like, oh, great. Like it's so quick. So yeah, definitely a good place to cut back if you'd like to. Okay, another place where you can really simplify things is going to be the venue. So I feel like there are like two kind of like ways that I could talk about this. So if you want like a very simple look, you can always go for like a very minimalist, like a blank space venue. So a lot of venues will even like call themselves that, meaning that they have spaces that you can celebrate in that don't have so much going on. This a lot of times can mean that you have the freedom to go crazy with decorations and you can decorate it in any way that you want, meaning like the space can be transformed in like 100 different ways. But you by no means have to go crazy with decorations. Of course, we're talking about the opposite of that in this episode. Another thing that you can do though is you can choose a venue that maybe isn't like a blank slate kind of situation. Maybe it like has some stuff going on already, but that means that you then don't have to provide a bunch of decor on your own. Like it will just speak for itself. So your venue is going to be a huge choice when it comes to your wedding, like no matter what. I mean, like it's just going to be a big deal, like one of the biggest decisions that you make in your planning journey. So choosing one that fits your aesthetic or fits your like want of planning tasks that you have, decor tasks, is going to be essential and a great way to kind of set the basis for what you want to do.
And honestly, that also kind of leads me into this next part where I want to talk a little bit about the ceremony. So like Chelsea said, like you can kind of go one of two ways, that blank canvas or something that is kind of like naturally adorned. I think either is really great, but I think you carry that too into like ceremony decor. So I think it's really easy to feel like, oh, my ceremony space needs to have some sort of backdrop or arch or something. And while that's really beautiful, you can also play into the strengths of your venue. So picking a venue maybe that has is a little more blank slate, you can dream up something simple and easy and quick. And maybe it's not an arch, maybe it's just two simple floral arrangements next to you and it's easy breezy. Or if you're getting married in a space that has a lot of like gardens, maybe that becomes your backdrop. Like you don't add anything to the ceremony space because you already are kind of framed by this beautiful garden area. I think that's a really great place to keep things really simplified. And you don't have to have like, I think you could have one sign that maybe has the like layout of like, here's the schedule of the rest of the evening, instead of everyone getting individual programs. Keep that pretty simple. You don't have to have like a little arrangement at the end of every seating aisle or things like that. I know they're really beautiful, but it's a detail that sometimes gets looked over, and no one's gonna be like, oh my gosh, she didn't have flowers at the end of her aisles. Like no one's gonna care. Or maybe if you really care, that's okay, then you can have it. There's a lot of these things you can pick and choose, but I really do think ceremony spot is a great place to kind of pare down, because again, unless you are having a certain type of ceremony, lots of these last like 30 minutes. And so for a space that you may not be spending most of your night in, it could be a great idea just to simplify it. It'll, again, save you money, just keeping focused on you getting married, because that's the most important part. Yes. So I think it's fun to do that. And yeah.
Yeah. And on the subject of decor, it can get very expensive. So like with a bunch of florals or whatever, like it can just get very expensive if you're going to go over the top with decor in any way when it comes to the ceremony or the reception. So returning back to what I said just a few minutes ago, if you know that you don't have it in your budget to invest in like a ton of florals or a ton of decor or whatever, choosing that venue or a space that maybe has beauty in it already without having to add a bunch of stuff is going to be a great way to go. And then in terms of decor, like maybe your style, your personal style is something that you would define as more minimalist in general. So maybe you lean towards, or you're more attracted to a more of a neutral color palette instead of something that's super bright and colorful or whatever.
Yeah.
So in that case, if you do still have it in your budget to incorporate some decor, but you just don't want it to be too loud, there are still options there. So it doesn't always have to be like over the top. And if you have neutrals, it doesn't mean it has to be boring either. So you can always have, I love when people use textures. So if people like incorporate fabrics of different kinds, maybe they are all of that like beigey shade, but if they're different textures, like maybe there's like a velvet involved, or I don't know, fabrics are like a great thing to play with. I think that that's really great. And a lot of times like less is more too. So instead of having something like a centerpiece that's a big colorful floral arrangement, maybe instead you can have something with like a geometrical shape, or you can opt for like those clear chairs. Do you know what I mean? Like those chairs that are like the clear acrylic chairs. Those look super beautiful, and I've seen those like in photographs of celebration spaces. It just like really simplifies everything. It makes like everything looks super clean. Yeah, without like nothing is frilly. It has that like sleek, modern and it doesn't obstruct any kind of view too. So if you are opting for more of that minimalist, just aesthetic in general, it doesn't mean that it has to be boring. And if you have the budget to toss into it, you can make it go somewhere for sure.
Yeah. Another thing to think about in simplifying your wedding is the attire. There are a lot of different ways that you can think about this. If you are somebody who likes the simple, minimal style of dresses, you might look for something without a bunch of tulle or big shapes or beaded things. Like there might be a more simplistic in the style, or you might be looking for just simplifying your wardrobe and making it as easy as possible. So if you were looking for those simple, sleek lines, I really think of just like classic shapes. I think of more of a satiny material. I don't think of a lot of lace or frills or beaded things. It's just very simple and sleek, and it's elegant and it's timeless, and I love that. Other attire that can be very simple is just when you think about the colors. If you just go for a classic white and black look, I think that is a great color palette to choose for your attire. It keeps the colors at a minimum. We've seen a lot of celebrity weddings do this too, where they keep to the classic black and white, and even their florals kind of match that. They don't even do any greenery, they just do white flowers. It keeps everything really pared down, but I think there's a lot of beauty in that. And There are also other ways to do that too. If you really just still like the more over the top styles when it comes to attire, but you want to keep things simple, we've said it before and we'll say it again. We love renting things for your wedding. That keeps it really simple instead of you having to like go and source all of these things, all of these different places, and having it honestly probably cost a lot. Rental places like Newly, Rent the Runway, Trousseau is also kind of a specialized in wedding attire. So we'd also recommend those resources if you were looking to simplify your wardrobe.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever gonna go wrong with just like a black and white situation. Like it always looks crisp and clean, and it just like looks good. Like it always will. So yeah, if you're feeling overwhelmed by color when it comes to attire in any way, I think like simplifying that palette, really can't go wrong. Another area that you can simplify things is going to be food and drink. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the wedding cake. The wedding cake can totally be simple, okay? Like it doesn't have to be like a big elaborate thing with like lots of designs on it. We've seen cakes of like every kind before, like for weddings, and a lot of them are super simple. And a lot of like I know for a while there was that trend of like the naked cake too. You can do anything, okay? It does not have to be over the top. And if you want to do something even simpler or more casual, you can opt for like pretty much any kind of dessert, and people are probably going to be happy with that, like seriously. If you have something to offer, that's great. Or
True.
if you want to like keep it super simple and do a small cake just for your cake cutting time to get those photos in, and I know a lot of people will do that, and then they'll serve their guests something different, like slices of cake from that they keep in the back, and it's just like sheet cakes. Saves a lot of money there. But you can simplify food and drink in other ways too. So you don't have to, if you have cake, you don't have to also have like a really elaborate dessert table. It's just not necessary. And you can also opt for more casual food options too, if that just feels better to you. Like if you're like, I know a lot of people will go for like a plated dinner that's like a little bit more elevated, like maybe like a higher end thing. If you don't want to do that, or it's not in your budget to do that, that's okay. We see people doing food trucks all the time, and it's so much fun. It has like this casual feeling. It just like kind of like sets a different tone for a wedding. I don't know if that's exactly like minimalist in terms of like the aesthetic wise of it, but it's a way to cut costs and just simplify things, right? And it also ensures that like people will like the food and like it'll be good, you know, like if it's like your favorite kind of food or something. So yeah, there's lots of ways to simplify that. Really, like if you've listened to our podcast before, like as long as this isn't your very first episode, we pretty much talk about this in every episode. It's your wedding day and you make the rules. So like really anything goes. If there are rules that you see in the wedding industry, you can break them, and they've been broken before, and that's awesome.
And they will be broken again. Like, yeah. Another place too in this aspect is keeping your bar to a minimum. Yes. I know a lot of people really feel like, oh, I have to have like a custom cocktail. I even was talking to Mackenzie, who was a guest on our podcast before, who's a wedding coordinator who is working with a bride right now. And she doesn't drink, but she was like, oh, I feel like I need to have custom cocktails. And we were like, no, you don't. You don't have to. Like, we were like, what's your favorite drink? She was like, I don't drink, so I don't know what I would even choose. And I guess she was just going to let Kenzie choose. But I was like, no, like, you don't have to. You don't have to do it. I get the appeal of it. It is very cute. I get it. But if you are somebody who wants to simplify things and you don't feel the need to have a custom cocktail or a full bar even, like, keep it simple. Keep it to like wine and beer or nothing at all. Whatever. Again, do whatever you want to do, which might help simplify things and also be cheaper. And lastly, the last thing I want to talk about is florals. So again, I've said it before in other episodes. I'll say it again. Like, I love florals. Florals are so fun. Florals are so incredibly beautiful, and they add a lot to a wedding day, but they easily get expensive. And I'm sure you've seen, like we have, and we have gawked over this, huge floral installation at celebrity weddings. I'm specifically thinking of Simone Biles' wedding, and she has this huge, like, 3-piece arch that is just covered in flowers. I cannot fathom how expensive all of the florals at that wedding were. They were beautiful. They were gorgeous, but I also have to think they probably went to waste at the end of the night because, like, there's not too too many other things you can do with it at that point, and it's expensive and it can sometimes feel over the top. There are a lot of ways to still attain the feeling of like fresh florals and the like beauty that they bring, but keeping it simple. So kind of like what we said earlier, that like if you have a bridal party and you want to have corsages and bouquets, pick one flower. You can do, I've seen it done so well where it's just each person has a bouquet of white roses and it's just white roses and it just looks so sleek and elegant and simple. And I've seen other weddings too where each bridesmaid has a different flower, but like all of that bouquet is one flower and the next bouquet is all a different flower, but they're all the same. Like there are lots of ways to go about this, which make it a little bit more attainable, a little bit simpler, and of course less expensive. So there are lots of ways to go about florals. You can also take the fake flower route. You can take the dried flower route. There are a lot of ways to do this to kind of pare it down, simplify it a little bit more. Even if you were just picking pampas grass, even if you're thinking of just having greenery, even can make the cost so much less if you're not involving lots of different colors of flowers. The colors, the varieties make it more expensive and can make it more complicated. So if you want to keep it simple, there are lots of ways to do that and you can still achieve that beautiful floral look if that's something you want.
Yeah, once again, you make the rules, no one else does. So if there's anything that you want to cut from your wedding to make it more minimal, you can totally do that. Or if there's just any designs that you just like don't gravitate towards because maybe you feel like they're too over the top or whatever, any way that you see that you can simplify, even if it's not on this list that we have right here, you can totally do that. Because at the end of the day, it's your wedding. So yeah, we love minimalist weddings. We love maximalist weddings too. But like really, it just depends on what your personal style is and what you want for your day.
Yeah. And sometimes you might be a person who feels like less is more. And the less is more kind of approach could be right for you. So it feels like, okay, less about the frills of a wedding day and more about the fact that you're getting married, which is the most important part anyways. But also, yeah, I'm probably more of a maximalist person. So I think there is so much beauty and fun to be found in both. And if you're looking for more inspiration, more ideas on this or anything else, Here Comes the Guide is a great place to look for those things, especially in our real wedding section. I feel like there's a lot of inspiration. I think there are a lot of more weddings that you'll find that are minimal, some that are maximal, and you can kind of look through all of those real weddings and get a gauge of where do I fall in that? Like which of these feels right to me?
Yes, lots of inspiration can be found there for sure. And of course, Here Comes the Guide is the best place to find wedding venues too. So if you're looking for those blank slate venues or anything like that, or a venue where it's maybe not blank slate, but you won't have to add a lot of your own decor to it, a great place to check out, herecomes.theguide.com. But yeah, that's all that we have to say about this today. But if you have any questions for us on wedding planning or, anything at all, episode suggestions, you can reach out to us on our website, which is theguidegalspodcast.com. On there, you can also find our full episode library along with lots of free resources for you in your planning journey. You can also connect with us on Instagram. We're on Instagram at The Guide Gals Podcast. We post lots of behind the scenes stuff over there, all kinds of fun things. And then we're on TikTok at The Guide Gals Pod. And we're also on YouTube on the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. All of our episodes have videos for them too. So if you're just listening, you should check out our YouTube channel, Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. We'd love to see you over there. But yeah, that's all that we have for you today.
Yes. Another fun episode. We say it every week, but we mean it because we really do love talking about all of these wedding planning things with you. So until next time though, cheers.
Cheers.